Welcome, impactful parents. Today we're going to talk about autism because your child, although they may not be autistic, may have an autistic friend. And we want to be able to welcome all children into our home. Not to mention, it is very important just to learn more about autism so we can interact with this population the best we can. So today I have a special guest on today. Her name is Becca Lory Hector. She was diagnosed with autism as an adult and since then has become a huge advocate, a consultant, a speaker, and even an author for the autistic community. Thank you for being on today, Becca.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
So the first thing I'm going to ask you, which I think really pertains to my audience, is, if our child has a friend that's autistic, we want to welcome that all children into our home. But I feel like a lot of us parents who do not have our own autistic children, we walk around on eggshells. I'm just being honest. And we don't want to say the wrong thing. We don't want to be not correct. So can you give us some advice and some help on what do we do when we want to invite an autistic child into our home?
Okay. This is a really good one because what it really is about reminding you that humans are humans, right? So autistic or not, there's an unknown human coming to your house and this unknown human has its needs, right? And when we talk about children, the space that we're missing is the ability to articulate those needs, right? So as adults, we understand our needs, we can ask for what we need, we know that, right? But when we're in unfamiliar surroundings, we still will kind of advocate for our own needs. As a child, you don't necessarily know what those needs are or what to call them or how to ask for them, or you're in an odd situation. So what you want to remember most of all is that here's a child just like your own, a human being that has needs, and maybe they don't know how to necessarily express them or ask you for them in a strange house. Maybe you're a stranger to them and their own parent isn't there, right? And we all know how awkward that can be, asking for something at a friend's house, right? So kind of just being aware that that's the situation that this human is in. And when they do ask for what they need, or when you're trying to guess for what they need, try to think out of the box a little. It's not going to be necessarily something that you would imagine would be the need. That child might have a need that's a little bit different, right? When we talk about children, on the spectrum entering certain environments, the stuff you want to kind of keep at the top of your brain is that we ask a lot of questions. We like to know exactly what's happening, exactly when it's going to happen, how it's going to go down, how we can prepare for it, right? We're those people that ask a lot of those questions. So answer them, be nice about it, right? And answer those questions. Sometimes we repeat what feels like the same question, but it's not. We're looking for a particular piece of information, and maybe your answer didn't give us that information, and so we'll re-ask the question, right? So just to be patient with the question asking, right? On the other side of that, when autistic children get nervous, we get selectively mute. So we get so nervous that we literally can't speak, right? And so making sure that you're checking in with the quiet child, that they don't actually have needs they're not able to ask for, right? And that kind of thing. Little other things you can do to prepare: ask their moms, what are their favorite things to eat? What are their favorite snacks? And have some of that familiar stuff in your house. Do they have any dietary needs or restrictions, right? And knowing those things and how you can prepare your house in that way. And really, the other thing is to just really listen, right? Because you're really just dealing with a child. It's just another child to yours. And so making sure that you're really listening to the words that they're choosing, right? Because they have a limited vocabulary. So they're choosing words they have available to them. And so making sure you're really listening to that. And my last piece of advice about that is to watch your children. They know better than you. This is their friend, someone they're in the classroom with, whatever, and they're being taught on a daily basis how to be a kind person, how to deal with difference, how to ask the questions they need to ask, right? I mean, these days in kindergarten, kids are learning about their pronouns and asking about their pronouns, right? So we're talking about some pretty sophisticated kids out there right now, and they'll take the lead, right? They know how to interact with this child, and so don't dismiss them as your teacher.
Just as you were speaking, I thought of what if I took that play date or that visit a step further and I want to invite this child to spend the night. Is there anything that happens for this child, that is typical to autistic kids that I would just need to make sure I'm aware of so I can ask the right question so that they can be comfortable in my home?
Yes, I think a lot of stuff, if you get an autistic child to sleep over to your house, congratulations, by the way, because really doesn't happen. We really are sensitive about sleep. We're really sensitive about routines, and we're really sensitive about safety. So in order to feel safe enough to sleep, we usually don't want to be outside of our own zone, right? And that's the case for a lot of us. I think that's not just an autistic thing. There are plenty of people that don't like to not sleep at home,
Oh yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
will drive home at midnight just to sleep in their own bed, right? And so that's kind of what we're dealing with, is kind of that version of sleeping at someone's house. So if they've agreed to it, they are taking a giant risk. So to be aware that that risk has been taken and to support them with some positive stuff would be great, right? Things like the meal planning, let them be a part of it. Let the kids play a role in what we're having for a meal so that all the needs get met, right? Around picky eating and that kind of stuff. Same thing about sensory, right? We have a lot of sensory needs. So being aware of your lighting and how loud the house is, right? And that kind of stuff will really make a difference. And to know that this child probably has little coping mechanisms that they've worked through with mom, right? A lot of us use our phone or an iPad as a way to kind of escape and just get ourselves together. A lot of us need quiet time and space away. So this is going to be an overwhelming situation for someone, their first sleepover, maybe at least the first at your house kind of thing. And to just remember they may need little things to help them be calm, right? Like their fidgets or a special blanket or a stuffed animal. Even though they may have outgrown that theoretical age where they need it, they may still have it. So teaching your child to be understanding about that, and teaching yourself to be understanding about that, and not point out the weirdnesses, right? We don't want to be doing that stuff. And really just be aware. And I think the very last thing that I would advise is to create an escape plan with their parent. So not every autistic kid is going to make it through the whole sleepover. Not every autistic kid, they think they will, right? Everything's fine while we're playing, but suddenly it's bedtime, right? And oh my God, I'm not in my own house, right? And what if I have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night? And what if this happens? And what if that happens? So to know that they may very well panic and need to go, right? And so to have a plan with their parent about how that's going to go down. Are you going to drive them home? Are they going to come get their kid? What is the plan, right? And how do you best sort of support their kid in an emergency state like that? What is the best thing that you can do? Some of us just need to be left alone. Some of us need to be comforted, right? And that parent will know what their kid needs. And so creating that a not embarrassing, a non-shameful, a non-guilt building escape plan for the child who just can't, right? Because then they'll come again and they'll try again. But if we make it embarrassing and we make it horrible, they're not going to do it a second time.
Oh, Becca, it's so informative what you're telling us. I so appreciate it. Can you speak a little bit about the spectrum for a lot of parents out there who don't really even understand what being autistic really means? And I just want to clarify that for some people who are listening right now, because I think it's really important.
Sure, absolutely. So we do talk about autism as a spectrum, but what I want you to really picture in your head is a color wheel. So a circular version of a spectrum like that, because we all have a different pattern of skills and a different pattern of challenges, and different areas where we struggle and areas where we're just really strong, right? And so all of those stigmas and stereotypes that you have in your head about what autism look like is not real, right? Because each and every autistic person is different. We're all different. We all have different needs, different skills, just like every other human being, right? We do have some things in common, right? We do struggle with sensory overall as a group. We struggle with social interactions overall as a group. But some of us are great socializers. Some of us are really enthusiastic, energetic, people that like to go out and socialize. Some of us are introverts, right? And so just knowing that autism comes in all shapes and sizes, and that some of us speak like me, some of us are non-speaking, right? Doesn't change our ability or intelligence, right? It just means that the mechanism through which we communicate is different, right? I was on the spectrum and I'm a girl, and that wasn't looked for a really long time. I'm a speaking girl on top of it, really not looked for. I'm hyperlexic, and I was testing gifted, also not on the spectrum, right? No one looking for me, but I'm there, and I do exist, and we are out there And so what you need to remember is that autism comes in all different shapes and sizes, right? And that's really what the spectrum is about, is that it's the spectrum of skill sets that we're talking about and where we fall on those skill sets, and whatever combination of that is your personal brand of autism, right? And so that's what we're looking at. It's not so much like a rainbow spectrum, more like a circle spectrum.
Why is it important to listen to autistic adults? Because I know I'm talking here about kids, but I mean, we're talking about a massive population here, and they don't remain kids forever.
Right. And well, that's part of it, right? Part of it is that we're not taught that. When we talk about autism, we talk about the kiddos. We talk about the kids a lot, often almost to excess, and not about adults at all. And that's a problem for those of us who did grow up and are autistic adults right now, and for those kiddos out there, because they're not getting mentors. They have no idea what they'll look like in adulthood. Their parents have no idea what they'll look like in adulthood. And everybody's sort of gearing them to succeeding in childhood, but not gearing them to success in adulthood. And that's a really big problem. Right. And the other portion of that is what I talked about before, which is that kids can't articulate. They cannot articulate their needs. They cannot explain why a situation is hard for them. They cannot unpack the emotional baggage of the trauma of their lives when you ask them what's wrong. They just can't. Developmentally, they're not ready, right? They don't have any of those skills. So when you really want to know what's going on with those kids, well, how about asking the adults that were those kids once, right? And we do hear a lot of backlash sometimes from parents. Like, I hear a lot, well, you don't look like my kid. Well, I damn well hope not. I am 44 years old. And if I look like your 4-year-old, I am in big trouble, right? And so that's a silly thing to say. Of course I don't look like your child. And even when I was a child, I still didn't look like your child because I was me and I wasn't your kid. And so, right. And so that idea that has sort of been implanted into these parents when they first get these diagnoses, right, is this idea that worry about your kid till they're 18. Well, that's nonsense, right? And it continues. And your kids need to learn the skill sets. They need to still be autistic in adulthood, but be successful and happy, right? And so we need to be talking about adulthood much earlier. And we need to be listening to the adults that are willing to talk, because we will make better children then. We will be handling those situations better. The social ones, like the ones we were talking about, right? But the school ones, the work ones, because it just gets worse when you're in your 20s and you're dealing with employment. If you can imagine how much your child is struggling in school, double it or triple it for employment in their 20s. Okay.
Wow,
So,
really?
but without thinking of that, you're just taking care of your kid, right? And they hit their 20s, and what we end up having is burnouts, which is a technical term in autism, but we basically shut down and we end up either stuck in our parents' home in the basement, or we end up in an institution, in a mental institution for short periods. We get medicated and things like that. And that stuff can be avoided if we start listening to autistic adults when our kids are kids, right? And so that's the importance of it. That's where it comes from. And there is no shortage of voices in the autistic community from adults. Hop on Facebook, you'll find millions of groups. We are all out there, and there are millions of books out there written by autistic adults sharing their experiences. And so if the information is out there for you, you need to know that your kid won't be a kid forever, right? And
I really hope that my audience right now that's listening to this, if you have an autistic child or you are an autistic adult yourself, that you will leave some questions and comments in this video right now, because like I said, I mean, just what you're saying, it makes sense. And it seems so logical. It's like, why haven't we been doing this before? And we want to hear you. We want your voices heard. It's the only way we're going to get better.
Right.
Really.
It's crazy, right? And so that's, whenever I get the opportunity to talk to parents, that's the message that I share. Your kid doesn't stop at 18. Your kid is going to be a grown-up. What kind of grown-up do you want to raise? Autism aside, what kind of grown-up do you want to raise? And how are you now going to teach this little person who also has autism those skills? what are you going to do about that? And that is really the goal, right? We hope they get them in school. We hope they get them in our therapies, because our parents are parents. They're not miracle workers. They're not all like certified, right? And so you hope that they get those skills. But sometimes, like the skills we need to teach at home, right? Like laundry, like budgeting, like the way you talk to people or don't talk to people, information that you share or don't share on the internet, all of those things, that's stuff that autistics need, and we almost need it more than regular children because we don't pick it up. And if you don't walk through the lesson with us, we won't learn it, right? I know in here how to drive stick. I sure do. I know the mechanics behind it. I know how it works. I know what I'm supposed to be doing with my body, but my body won't let my coordination happen that way. I have dyspraxia as part of my autism. So I have all the knowledge in the world about how to drive stick shift, but I have never driven stick shift in the world because nobody ever sat me down in a car and said, this is how you drive stick shift. This is how you need to make your body move to do that, right? And my brain needs that to learn. My brain needs the physical along with the verbal to learn, right? And you will know that about your kids if you're being an attentive parent. You know where your kid's strengths lies. Don't let the outside world tell you otherwise. They will try, but you know your kid best. You may not be an autism expert, but you are your child's expert until they can take over, right?
And when I'm listening to you, I'm hearing that autism is hereditary, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So
what we're thinking now, what we hear these days is it's about 85% sure that it's genetics. There are other causes that are in there, and some genetic causes that are the autism is like a side note to whatever the genetic condition is, right? Something like Rett syndrome. So there's a lot of that. But what we do know is that vaccines do not cause autism. We know that you can't catch it anywhere, right? It's not catching. We know it can't be cured. It's the way that your brain is built from the moment that you enter this planet, right? And so it's how your wires get connected, right? And so it doesn't go away, right? We don't grow out of it. All of these little myths. And what we do know is that sex causes autism, right? You have sex, you have a baby, and your genetics passed along that autism. And so the direct cause of autism is sex. And I'm sorry to say that unless you want your sex life cured, you can't cure autism, right? And so what we can do is give people the supports they need to make up for what we're missing out in the world, right? The world isn't built for someone who is autistic, someone whose brain works differently. And so what we need to do is provide the supports to make the world more comfortable for those people, for those of us that are different, right? The same way you would with any other disability, physical or otherwise. And so that's the idea, right? Oh no, you can be whatever you want to be, right? You want to be president, but your route to getting there to be president is going to be different than everybody else's. And being open to the different path is all you have to do as a parent, is to just say, okay, right now trains is the thing. You want to be a train conductor? Let's go with that. That's your child's language that they're speaking right now. That's their passion at the moment. Maybe it's a career. Let's go exploring down that road, right? That's your job, is just to hold their hand on the path, right? And to make sure you don't close doors on them.
You have such a breadth of knowledge about all of this and can offer so much to this community and to every community, really, in my opinion. How can my audience get a hold of you and we can find out more and you can educate us more?
Well, you can find everything about me or that you need from me on my website, which is Becca Lory, LORY.com. Right now, my big push and my big kind of passion project is helping all of the other autistic adults out there who are getting late in life diagnoses. So some of you parents might get a diagnosis along with your kid and you find out way late in life. Some of us, like me, never had children and I just happened upon it in a different way. But getting diagnosed late in life has a lot of different impacts on your life. And it also presents a wealth of opportunities. And so what I have done is built a course for those autistic adults that are diagnosed late in life. It's a personal development course, like the 4 agreements, like that kind of stuff. And it's built for the autistic brain and built for the truths of the trauma that we've lived up until the point of not having our diagnosis. It's really dealing with all of the really particular things that because of the diagnosis or because of the lack thereof, we struggle with. And how can we get out of a life that we've built with misinformation and rebuild a life with the new information on board? And that's what the course is about. So that's really what I'm doing now, but I am happy to speak to any parent group, any educators. I do a lot of public speaking, more so virtually these days, but I will do those things. I do a lot of writing, that's on the website. And my other thing is my YouTube channel. I'm working really, really hard to give as many free resources to the world as I can. And one of those is my YouTube channel. I do 2 live streams a week, and I'm always looking for people to kind of watch. So thank you.
Becca, you are amazing. And not only are you going to help the autistic world, but you are going to make big changes in the world in general. So thank you so much for being on today. I cannot appreciate it anymore. You have so much that you could teach us, and just, I'm so thankful. Thank you guys for being here today. And don't forget, you're all impactful parents. We're just here to help.